Welcome to For Wales, See Wales with me, Robin Morgan.
Me, Mel Owen.
And me, Will Hayward.
Hello, you sound hungover.
Well, that is very observant of you, Robin, because I am hungover.
Congratulations. You both were at the Welsh BAFTAs last night.
We were. One of us takes this podcast seriously and didn't drink last night.
Thank you so much. Very much appreciate it. How was it?
Yeah, it was all right, wasn't it? It was fun. It was very fun. You saw the Crachach there in all their glory.
Oh, the Crachach were out in force, weren't they? Yes. Yeah. It's I think those things you forget. There's so much talent in Wales, and I don't think people realise how good the some of the stuff that we produce is.
Yeah.
Obviously, also this podcast.
Yeah. Well, you were watching the stuff that was going on. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, I really want to watch that. Actually, there was so much. That looks really great.
Just add to Netflix. Queue.
Yeah, exactly as it was going.
Nice.
That was great, wasn't it?
It's I'm always the problem with the BAFTAs is have you seen that in extras when I think it's in like the second season when Ronnie Corbett goes and he's doing coke at the BAFTAs
Sure.
With Stephen Merchant, and the guy from BAFTA catches him and goes, "You will never go to the BAFTAs again." And Ronnie Corbett goes, "What about the Welsh BAFTAs?" And the guy replies, "Would you like to go to the Welsh BAFTAs?"
Yeah.
So I got quite excited about it, and then my dad reminded me of that clip, and I was like,
Sure.
Oh,
can't let me have anything.
I've had a big week as well, guys. Thank you for
Oh
asking.
my god! Sellout show.
Very close, 15 tickets short of a sellout show, but hey, let's call it a sellout show. It's fine.
Yeah.
Mainly, I've been getting lovely comments about this. I was at Soon Festival watching a band in Porters, and I took a chair, did that awkward thing where you're like, "Are you using this chair?" And they said yes. I was like, "Does that mean someone's sitting on it or whether you're using it?" And he goes, "Do you do the podcast?" And I was like, "Yeah." It was the whitest interaction I've ever had.
Brilliant.
Where another white man said to me, "Do you do a podcast?" And I said, yes, I do a podcast. It was great. But also, I was in Cardiff city centre and a man cycled past me on his bike and he goes, "Like the podcast?" And I was like, "Thanks."
Oh,
So we're getting traction.
We are.
The man on the street on the bike.
I got it in Machynlleth.
There we go.
I had a gig. I was opening for Ellis James,
Nice.
and on the way out, a woman also on a bike. Also on a
We're
It's the same person just cycling around shouting at
They're
them.
knackered.
They just have to listen to podcasts to get them through.
Well,
Yeah.
Love that.
We're talking about white exchanges. One of our most listened areas is actually not even in Wales. It's Fulham and Hammersmith.
Fulham and Hammersmith.
Don't
What's
know
going on?
I don't know how we've reached an audience in Fulham and Hammersmith, but it's
Oh, thank you, though. Is there like a little Welsh diaspora there?
Maybe.
or just one person who loves us and plays
Yeah,
it like over
yeah.
and over again.
Some Welsh person in Putney just over and over and over again. Love that for them. Fair
Yeah,
play.
thank you, though.
Well, yeah, and
Thank you.
thank you for listening, and thank you for all the comments. It's been really, really nice, isn't it? Like we've had some lovely feedback, and
Yeah.
obviously, like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. That really, really helps.
100%. I think what we would say to people, if you do like this, we're not part of a wider organisation. We're not part of a podcast network. And actually, if you share this, even if it's just verbally, like saying to people, "Have you heard this? This is good," liking it on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, and subscribing, that is just massive. It just really makes it so much easier to grow, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it all really, really helps. All those little bits of engagement, mostly positive, we would like.
Yeah, absolutely.
It all helps. So thank you so much to everybody who has been supportive this far, though, because it has been great.
It's been fun. And if you don't want to share things online, then just get on your bike and drive around the streets shouting that you like a podcast.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. Please do.
That's the dream.
Public transport in Wales, it's not hot. It's not good.
It's not.
And I'm trying my best, right? I'm trying to make Greta proud by taking public transport as much as I can. When we were up in Fringe, it was like a whole new world. I'd never taken buses before.
Yeah.
And then I went to Edinburgh and I was like, this is great. This
It's
is
a dream, man.
Yeah. Do you know what? Also, I'm going to say it. Being brown or black on a bus is great because if you want to sit down, you just whisper something about Rosa Parks and everyone's just like, yeah, we'll get up. You sit down. You sit down. It's brilliant.
Love that.
Yeah, it's
Love
really
that.
brown privilege. In that one scenario, it was great.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
thanks,
sure.
Rosa. She did that for me.
Thanks,
Do you
Rosa.
sit at the front of the bus?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, on the driver's lap.
Yeah.
That's what Rosa would have wanted.
Like when your dad used to let you drive.
But on the,
Can't reach the pedals.
Got on the Royal Mile.
Like the
like this.
Playdays bus, just crashing into things.
That was me. But I can't. I thought when I get back to Cardiff, I'm going to take buses all the time. I'm a bus girly now. And I'm not. Like,
Well, you're from Aberystwyth originally.
Yes.
If you were to try and get to Cardiff, not in a car, how have you got to do that?
right, so you'd have to get the worst bus in the world to Carmarthen, which would take 4 working days, and then get the train down from Carmarthen, which again takes hours, or you'd leave and go to Shrewsbury via the train and then go back down into Cardiff. You're looking 5 to 6 hours either way.
What is crazy, is mad, isn't it, that to get from the west coast of Wales to the capital of our nation, you have to go via England.
It's mad, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's absolutely crazy.
how has that happened though? Like how is it still happening?
Mountains. Is that the answer?
Yeah, let's blame them.
Well, I think so. Part of the problem is, as you say, it takes a long time to get from anywhere in Wales. If you wanted to go from Bangor in the north to Carmarthen in the south, that train is minimum 6.5 hours via Shrewsbury. Now, just for context, if you wanted to get from London to Edinburgh, that's 4.5 hours, which is a lot longer geographically in terms of distance. But I did want to talk to you about HS2. So you guys know HS2?
I've heard of it.
I'm aware of its work, yeah.
Or lack of.
Yeah.
So HS2 is the high-speed rail line which was supposed to link London with the north of England. There's been lots of back and forth. Bits have been cancelled. It's now going to go from London to Birmingham and then on to Crewe. That's the distance it's going to go. Now, it is costing billions and billions of pounds. At its peak, it was going to cost about 90 billion. I think we're probably around 50 billion now.
Sure.
But it depends on who you ask and where the project is. But I'll tell you where the project isn't. It is not in Wales. Okay, so it is not in Wales. However, back in 2014, David Cameron, do you remember him?
Yeah, the old DC.
Yeah, DC comic. His government decided to define HS2 as an England and Wales project. Now, obviously, that is insane because there's none of the track in Wales. Now, it might sound like a small thing how you define a project, but because they defined it as an England and Wales project, all of that money that is spent on it is considered to be spent on England and Welsh infrastructure. So what that means is Wales gets no additional money. Wales was given a comparability factor of 0%, whereas Scotland and Northern Ireland were given a 100% comparability factor.
So can I just double check that?
Right.
Does this mean that they then got some extra money? They were almost paid for it not benefiting them.
Yes.
So they were like, so seeing as we've got this big project that actually isn't going to benefit you, here's a bit of cash.
Exactly.
And Wales didn't get it. Am I right?
100%. Okay. So basically, Scotland's going to get about 6.5 to 7 billion pounds because of HS2 spending in England. Northern Ireland, I think, is going to get about 3 billion.
That's a lot of money.
That is an incredible amount of money. Huge. Wales would be on for about 4 billion pounds if they hadn't done this.
You said that like it was an accumulator bet.
Yeah.
Cash out now. Cash out on the England and Wales project.
But what's crazy about this is, let me give you context of what 4 billion pounds would do. So £4 billion, you could build the South Wales Metro around Cardiff. You could build the Swansea Bay Metro. You could connect Aberystwyth and Carmarthen by train. You could electrify the North Wales main line and make it much more interconnected with Merseyside. You could do all of that for £4 billion. Now, these figures come from Professor Mark Barry, who's one of the leading experts on transport in Wales. Good old Mark. He's great. Look up his blog. It's very good. But we're not getting it because the Treasury in Westminster has decided that it is an England and Wales project. Now, this is an accountancy sleight of hand, which has absolutely shafted Wales. And how do you think they justify this, considering that none of the track is in Wales?
Are they trying to say that because people commute out of Wales, would it technically benefit them?
So over the last kind of 6-7 years, the Conservative government in Westminster, and now actually the Labour government in Westminster, have tied themselves in knots trying to justify this. They have said it will make it much easier for people from North Wales to get to London. So this is therefore a Wales project. Not to mention that it will also help people from Scotland to travel around England. When I've asked various Tory MPs over the years why, one of them, I've made the point that Northern Powerhouse Rail is also been defined as an England and Wales project. And their answer was, well, Welsh people can use it when they go to Leeds.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely insane. That's like
so
saying...
can German retirees.
Yeah, everyone can when they go to Leeds. But this is crazy. This is like me saying, actually, we're going to cut Welsh NHS funding because if a Welsh person gets ill in London, they can use that hospital. So that's like considering health spending in London. Welsh, it is, for want of a better word, bollocks. There is no way of justifying it. It is utterly unjustifiable. You know the Elizabeth line?
Yeah.
It's a nice line.
It's a gorgeous line.
It's a really, really nice line. when that was built, it's called Crossrail, because that was so clearly an English project, they just defined it as an England project, and Wales did get a consequential. So we're not asking for something which is, unheard of.
Yeah, there's a precedent there.
Now, Welsh Labour have been going on about this for years and saying it is outrageous. Mark Drakeford looked at taking the UK government to court over it.
Yeah.
He was like so annoyed by it. Joe Stevens, who is the Secretary of State for Wales now, stood up in Parliament and said, the Elizabeth line was counted as an England project, so should HS2.
What are they going to do now then? The English Labour, that's what we're calling them, are in Westminster. What are they going to do?
Joe Stevens has started wearing a Jerry Halliwell Union Jack dress. It's all about UK now, baby. Girl power.
Oh.
So there's real tension between Welsh Labour and UK Labour now because of this feeling that, well, we're owed this money. The budget is coming next week, and it doesn't look like Wales are going to get anything in terms of HS2 funding. It is outrageous.
Welsh Labour really need to stick to their guns, though, to remain credible. That's the thing, because if you have been vocal about it before, you can't then decide that actually, no, you do agree in the end anyway. Like, they'll make themselves so much less credible, and they're only going to just drive that kind of disconnect that people are starting to feel with them at the moment anyway.
Yeah, this is the worst time for them not to stand up for people now, isn't it? I mean, I love the idea that Mark Drakeford was going to take them to court. He strikes me as the kind of person that would represent himself in court.
Yes.
Like,
That is such a good call.
I've done the research. I've become a barrister overnight.
Yes.
And I know exactly what I'm going to do. It's strange for it's not like the Labour Party to do infighting, though. That's really strange.
No,
What's going on there?
It's really, really unusual.
Yeah.
But obviously, Wales has got massive issues of like poverty and low productivity and a kind of underperforming economy. And you can't fix those things if your transport network is terrible.
Yeah.
No.
And this would be transformative. But don't worry, because if you live in Rhyl, you'll be able to get to London, 20 minutes quicker.
Yeah, you get an earlier appointment at Madame Tussauds.
But doesn't that sum up the attitude towards not just Wales, but like the regions of England, that in order to be successful, all you need to be is closer to London. Rather than make these places successful, just get them closer to London.
Which has, a bad effect on like the north of England. Still, do you know what I mean? Like that is an attitude that is actually disparaging to the north of England, anywhere that isn't London. So whilst Wales is kind of like losing out on this, like the north of London still, the north of England, it kind of demonstrates these are like forgotten areas,
Let me give you some numbers.
Yeah, I love number.
Okay, so these numbers. The percentage of rail line that is electrified in England is 44%. So 44% of rail tracks in England are electrified. In Scotland, that figure is 33%. Guess what the figure is for Wales?
I mean, is it even above 20?
It's definitely not above 20.
Oh.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, what is it? Because doesn't it stop at Swansea on that Paddington?
It doesn't even get to Swansea.
Does it stop at Cardiff?
Just after Cardiff.
And so, but the plan was eventually to do it to Swansea. So what's that going to be like, 9% or something?
3.7% of track in Wales is electrified. 3.7
I
compared to
remember
44% of England.
Like the Tories had this big electrification to Swansea. Like that was that was like a big tagline, wasn't it? Again, that just didn't happen. Then something else didn't happen in Swansea as well.
The Tidal Bay
Lagoon. And so it just felt like it was all around the same time, wasn't it?
Yeah, totally. Just all these projects just falling by the wayside.
Yeah.
Presumably because there's no money, because it's all getting spunked up on HS2, right?
Yeah.
Was there a HS1?
Kent, Ashford to London.
Kent, Ashford for London, said Producer Darryl. Would be really good as a credible journalist if I'd known that off the top of my head, wouldn't it? Producer Darryl, everyone.
All of Will's brilliant explainer videos and newsletters is just Darryl pulling the strings in the background. That's all it is.
They're also cute.
So it looks like Wales is staying in second class for a while.
Yeah.
Gosh, it's so difficult as well because, like you say, it limits economic growth to such an extent, and also the lack of reliability. Like you said, I'm an Abergirl. The thought of like getting anywhere not by car is just inconceivable.
Yeah.
I would never nip to Cardiff on the train. Like you just can't do it.
No, totally. And like as gigging comics, I don't even think, I'm lucky that I drive.
Yeah.
But I couldn't get to gigs because I couldn't rely on. I just get them and just expect sweet Deliveroo pay. But you just can't get, they're too expensive. And I just it's their lost leaders. Also, I'm reading Invisible Women at the moment by Caroline Criado Perez. And like public transport is like a huge thing within sort of like, bad public transport completely affects women more than men as well, because traditionally women have to get public transport to work and to care for people and things. So it has such a huge impact both economically and societally, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, if you live fairly rurally and your train is once an hour and sometimes it doesn't show up, and when it does, it's 2 carriages and it's packed. That being 3 times an hour and reliable is far more meaningful in terms of the impact it'll have on your life than if you can just get to London a little bit quicker.
I do want to shout out, as an Abigail, the public transport, the height of public transport I had was the post bus on a Friday morning, right? And it was great. So it was literally the postman, but on the Friday, he would drive a minivan. And if you wanted to go to town, you could get in that, but you'd have to stop at every house on the way to town that he was delivering letters to, and then you couldn't get back. It was one way. But you know what? I felt so grown up when I was on it.
The post bus.
Yeah.
What was he doing his shift at the same
Yes.
time?
Yes. I love it. And like us, 14-year-olds who are like getting to go to town.
Yeah.
Without mum and dad was great. But then I'd have to ring dad and be like, "Can you come and get me?"
Yeah,
'Cause,
exactly.
it doesn't go back the other way.
I bet the unionised bus drivers were furious at this man. Just scab, dropping her passengers off. I love that.
Yeah, but that was public transport in Wales. Has it got any better?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So we focused on Welsh Labour. Let's talk about the official opposition of the Welsh Government, which is the Welsh Conservatives.
Yeah, Welsh Tories. You've got a bit of experience with the Welsh Tories, haven't you, Mel?
I do. I know.
Card-carrying member.
I am. I do. I had to take off my Union Jack suit just to do this. When I was 19, I went to work for Alan Kent, who used to be the Secretary of State for Wales for a little bit. He was at the time. Well, I think he was made Secretary of State while I was there, actually.
Because of you.
Yeah, it was all me, actually.
The mellow and bump.
Yeah, that's what happens to them all. That's what you guys, you got a great future ahead of you now. So I was there when I was at university, and it was just after the 2015 election. And then up until then, I left, a couple of years later. And it was an education.
Were you doing that while you were at uni?
Yes, I was at uni.
Some people working like Tiger, don't they?
Yeah, I know. Do you know what? I had an interview for Walkabout, didn't get it. So I was like, do you know what the next obvious step is?
Go and
The
work for
Welsh
Alan Kent.
Conservatives.
Shot girl and Alan Kent. So what did you go around the office with, like those test tubes full of like Jaegers
test tube
and stuff?
shots,
Love that.
Just went around those at lunchtime, guys. It's a Wednesday.
They probably would drink at lunchtime, right?
Yeah, they fucking would.
I actually kind of owe Alan Cairns my kind of start of my career, really, because when you're a junior reporter, you cover all sorts of stuff. You don't just cover politics. You cover, like, if there's a fire somewhere, if Audi sells a new bottle of Prosecco, you cover it. But he was kind of how I started doing political reporting. So there's a few things. The first one was I used to go through the declaration of interest by MPs. And at one point, I think he had 3 extra jobs on top of his role as an MP, for which he did 70 hours a year for each one, which was impressive. Yeah. But also, I went through his donations and I saw that he'd received a donation from a Japanese tobacco company of 2 tickets to the Chelsea Flower Show worth £1,000. £1,000. And this was just before he voted against banning smoking in cars with children. So that was one of my first ever experiences.
Man loves flowers.
Yeah, he fucking loves that Chelsea Flower
Oh my
Show.
God, what a
Yeah.
horticulturalist.
Now, I should be clear, I am not a tall man, before I say this. I'm 5'8", every Hayward male is 5'8", it's our thing.
Yeah.
Family of miners historically, so if you're tall, you died.
Yeah. You got down those holes quickly and easily, efficient.
Yeah.
I mean, me and you'd be knocking our heads. It'd be awful.
It's very bad for my ego, actually, when we all stand up. But Alan Kent is also not a tall man, is he, Mel?
No, he's not. It was odd if we had a hug. He would fall in a very weird area.
Oh, my God.
He enjoyed the hugs more than I did. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I've got 2 tickets to the flower show if you want to come along.
Bring it in.
Have a cigarette. Come on now.
His voice was nowhere near that deep.
Yeah. I'm really sexing
you
him
really
up,
are.
aren't I?
You're making him Richard Burton for some
I'm
reason.
Alan Cairns.
But I remember one of my first ever political stories was, and I'd like to say it was a deep investigation into wrongdoing, but it wasn't. Actually, there was a picture of Alan Cairns and one of the other Covenant members, Chris Grayling, who I think is about 6'4".
He's massive.
Yeah, he is so tall.
He's so tall. And basically, there was a headshot of the two of them, and they were like next to each other, and you could see Alan Kent's a bit shorter, but the zoomed out one, Alan Kent was like on his tippy toes. And so I did a piece on man stands on tiptoes. And what's annoying is it did so much better than all the actual good journalism I did. Yeah.
I remember that very vividly. I remember this
Were you
story.
working in the press
yes,
office?
I was there at the time.
I didn't realise. So was it you I contacted?
No, it wasn't. So it was his spad that you contacted. And I remember you put this out, and then he tweeted, and there was a big deliberation as to what to tweet because they had to acknowledge it. And I was very much on the case of just ignore it. Just ignore it. It's, it's funny and it will go away. And they were like, no, we do need to respond, right? And I think they said, well, it was something like, you caught me, or something like that. Busted. It was busted, right? And everyone in the office was like, yeah, we fucking showed that, Will Hayward. We've showed it. And I was like, have you?
Yeah.
There were so many times, and I was kind of in the end where I left, but there were so many times where I was like, am I the weird one? Sure. Am I the one in this room that I clearly missed something? So like, and they were all so chuffed with this busted comment. They were like, yeah, we fucking showed him.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if you have. I think the joke is still very much you.
That's so funny that they had like a brilliant comic mind in the team, and they were just like, no, we'll ignore Mel.
Yeah,
We've got
like,
this
fucking
here.
Mel, please, all right?
Yeah, I did shit myself. Your move, Hayward. Your move.
That's literally what it was like, honestly. There were so many times where it was like, I felt like, no, I am the weird one. I must be. I've missed something, But yeah, it was. I could go on for years about it. But it was honestly such an education as to how I wouldn't do things in the future.
Yeah, amazing.
So as you say, the Welsh Conservatives are the opposition. So they are the official opposition to Welsh Labour. And I'm gonna go on a bit of a rant in a minute, but first I want to give you a little example. Sure. Last year, they tweeted that the Welsh Conservatives would properly fund the Welsh NHS. Now, that's actually quite a big thing because in order to the Welsh NHS makes up a massive, massive part of the Welsh Government budget. It's easily the thing that most Welsh Government money is spent on. And if you're going to say you're going to fund it and you're going to do a big increase, how are you going to do that? Because the things that you would need to cut are things like housing and education and stuff. So where is that money going to come from? So I messaged them. They are the opposition. I, as a journalist, messaged them and said, what would you change? What are you going to do differently? How are you going to properly fund it? And they came back saying, we are going to cancel Labour's vanity projects. Now, it's not great on detail.
It's a bit brief,
Yeah, it was very brief. Yeah. So I said, yeah, thanks for that. It is, as I say, light on detail. Could you give me a list of things that you would cancel, which you would now use to fund the NHS? And they gave me a list. I'm going to read through some of them. They were Cardiff Airport, which is owned by the Welsh Government, the M4 relief road planning, the expansion of the Senate, the basic income pilot, 20-mile-an-hour zones, universal free school meals, a voting pilot, the Constitutional Committee, the Technium Centres, Ebervale Cable Car, Mainport Engineering, My Tree Our Forest, which is when the Welsh Government gave some people some trees, and Gileston Farm. Now, I don't expect you to know all of them.
So are these things that they were saying they were going to get rid of?
They say, yeah, we will get rid of them, and that's how we will fund the NHS.
They've got to get rid of Cardiff. They used to wet themselves over Cardiff Airport when Qatar were flying in and out.
Well,
and all of a sudden that finished.
Well, the problem with a lot of these things is they've already happened.
Sure.
Yeah.
One of these things was from 2003.
What was from 2003?
From 2003, it was Bryn Kegin, which is a 90-acre industrial park in Bangor, where the plans were first submitted in the year 2000.
Sure.
The Technium Centres were in 2003. So essentially, they're going to cut something that happened 20 years ago. So that money's been spent.
Yeah.
They've also said they would not have done the relief road planning for the M4 because the M4 relief road was cancelled.
There's a lot of stuff we wouldn't have done, but it's happened.
It's like saying we wouldn't have participated in World War II. It doesn't make any sense. It is absolutely ridiculous. It is not credible. But there are a few things there that could be cancelled. So the basic income pilot was £6.6 million. The amount they put into Cardiff Airport is £8 million a year, roughly. The Senate expansion is about £12 million. Yeah. Now, if you add up all of these things, even if we've been really generous and saying we can cancel some of these things, because actually some of them you probably couldn't cancel now, that adds up to 105 million. No, 100.5 million. So ultimately, that is 1% of the Welsh NHS budget. So that saving, you could maybe give people a 1% pay rise in the NHS. That's not going to transform it. So I went to them as the opposition and said, what are you going to do? And they haven't got a clue. They do not know what they are going to do. There are so many easy ways to be a good opposition in Wales. There is so much which is objectively bad. But instead, they say, we are going to cancel things which are 20 years old. It's just a joke. It's so frustrating.
But also, a good opposition is vital to a good government. At the end of the day, there has to be a good opposition, whether you love the Tories or you hate them. Them being a good party who are operating successfully within their own remit would only help the Welsh government. That kind of checks and balances procedure relies on good opposition. And it feels weird for me when you say that they are, because they are the official opposition in Wales, but it really doesn't feel like they're not even operating like they believe that they are. Plaid are acting like they're like we are now. Like they've just decided they are, and they're acting like an actual opposition. The Tories have counted themselves out the race.
Yeah, totally. I mean, they did say they're going to properly fund the NHS, and if that amount of money comes to £100 million, maybe that's just how much money they'd put into the NHS. Maybe they genuinely believe they're like...
Being honest.
The Welsh NHS is only 1% off being properly funded.
Yeah. Wild.
Let me explain why this is so bad for Wales. So, you've got a Welsh Labour government which has been in power for 25 years. The opposition, the main people who are a threat to them, are simply not a threat to them. They have a leader in Andrew R.T. Davies who I was trying to understand his strategy because it doesn't make any sense. He has a weird Twitter campaign where he does completely bizarre attention-seeking tweets. Like he once did a rhyme where he said, roses are red, violets are blue, don't be woke, it's not good for you. The opposition. Imagine if the run-up to the last general election, Keir Starmer had tweeted that. Yeah. It is insane. It is not credible. But now I do kind of understand what he's doing because actually his aim is not to win. His aim is to stay as leader. Everything he does is about appealing to the membership, the Welsh Conservative membership in Wales, which actually could probably all share a Land Rover to their conference. There's not many of them. What annoys me most about this is that by having an opposition which has no credible chance of winning, that has no vision for the country they pretend they want to lead, it means we are condemned in Wales to a Welsh Labour government, which is, I think you can't argue, really running out of ideas and running out of energy. The lack of credible alternative essentially makes devolution not work because good governments relies on them being like a renewal of ideas and changes and people coming in with different ways of doing things. And we just don't have it because Wales, although it's economically quite left, socially it's quite small C conservative. There's a lot of quite conservative people in Wales and there's an absolute space in Welsh politics for a sensible, realistic and thoughtful Welsh Conservative Party, but instead they are like a Reform tribute act, which just condemn us to this bleak, miserable, completely unaccountable form of governance. And then people go, well, devolution doesn't work, does it? And, well, in its present form, it isn't because we're subjected to this dross. And there's real talent on the Tory benches. There are some really talented people. There is also, it's not even dead wood. It's like wood which is just covered in moss and has got like wood lice living in it. It is...
But that talent, they're not in the Senedd. And I can tell you, like from personal experience, that any talent that the Welsh Conservatives had, they ship off to London as quickly as they can because they don't believe in the Senedd really as something that is worth them really trying for. It's there, it's fun that it's there, but they take the piss out of how little work their group do in the Senedd.
Was that your experience?
100%. Yeah. It was like a running joke. Wow. It was like the Senedd group. Let's call them to do it because they're not doing anything else. But any talent that they do have, they ship off to Westminster as quickly as they can. So then if they keep doing that, they're never going to be a credible party in the Senedd. And they don't want to be. If they wanted to be, and I do mean this with respect, they wouldn't have Andrew R.T. Davies as their leader. But also, what other option do they really have?
I think that there's some of the newer intake, which actually are fairly sensible. They're fairly pragmatic in terms of what's needed to win. And I speak to people within that party, and none of the members, the Senedd members that is, want Andrew R.T. Davies to be there.
No.
There's a bit of a divide now forming between a couple of people at the MSs in North Wales, so people like Sam Rowlands, people like Darren Miller, who are more sceptical about devolution. And then you've got the South Wales MSs, you have Natasha Asghar and you have people like Tom Giffard, who are a bit more pro-devolution. And they all want him gone. They can all agree on that, but none of them wants to be seen as the people to stick the knife in. And it's so they just have such a lack of backbone, and it's almost crass, their lack of ambition for Wales. But what annoys me even more in a weird way is the fact that if Tories are anything over the years, they're good at winning elections. The Conservative Party, historically, UK-wide, they win elections.
As a political machine, they're like amongst the strongest in Europe.
Except in Wales, where they've just given up. It's embarrassing. And then people in Wales go, right, okay, well, I wouldn't consider myself left-wing. I want an alternative. I can see that my hospitals are failing, my schools aren't good. Well, I can't vote for this guy because he's doing limericks on like social media. Well, I'll vote Reform. And then we end up in this just weird situation where just things don't work and it leaves you so without hope. And maybe I'm just hungover. And that could be why I'm like so annoyed in this rant.
Could also be the title of this podcast. Just saying.
But I just find it incredibly frustrating that this lack of ambition that they have, where we have an opposition party that doesn't even clearly want to lead. They're running a campaign which might work in the southeast of England in 2016. And Wales is a different political animal to England, and you can't run a campaign in Wales how they're running it. And I mean, their only hope of winning is if Reform do really well and they go into a coalition. I mean, is that leadership? Is that vision? I don't think it is.
If we have huge Reform successes in Wales in the Senedd election, the only people to blame will be Welsh Labour and Welsh Conservatives to have allowed this to happen. You know, and at the end of the day, there are so many groups of people who feel unrepresented, unheard, and Reform will come and sweep them up. And there will be people who vote for them through gritted teeth and don't want to agree with them on the shooting people in small boats stuff, and they don't want to agree with them in the hangings and all of that, but they are listening to us about things that affect us economically, and the only people to blame will be the Welsh Conservatives and Welsh Labour for not listening to those disenfranchised people.
Yeah, I think we're in a really interesting 18 months now where I think the whole landscape of things is going to change, possibly forever, within Welsh politics. I think if Reform do really, really well, what is the point of the Welsh Conservatives?
Yeah,
They could be
exactly.
completely wiped out.
Well, exactly. They've just expanded the Senedd. And what we saw from when UKIP were in the European Parliament, they don't attend things like scrutiny committees very often. They just don't do it. So we'll have expanded the Senedd to get 20 extra Reform MSs who, I'm not saying all of them, some of them might be incredibly diligent politicians, but historically we've seen that they are not the most attentive to the minutiae of actual governance and scrutiny. So, well, I hope everyone's enjoyed and had a really nice time.
Really
Can you talk about Wales?
Absolutely. Both of you have a Barocca and we'll be better next week.
I think that's probably it for this week, isn't it?
I think it probably is. We should give a shout out to HayMan Studios.
Absolutely.
HayMan Studios.
Yeah.
Where we record this beautiful podcast every single week.
In Newport.
Absolutely. They're a brilliant organisation. You can host your own podcast here. If you want to have your rival podcast, then feel free to. And then we'll do a West Side Story style battle at the BAFTAs next year.
Yeah, I know, because I know some of their clients are people who want to have a podcast for maybe like their like SEO outreach and stuff like that,
Sure.
or to have on their website or to promote their product. So they do really good stuff, and we really appreciate the work they do for us here.
You know who will also really appreciate some sweet, sweet sponsorship.
Please, we need that dollar piece.
So if you want to sponsor us, let us know. We can put things on this little grass bit here. We can change that. I don't know. We could just put ITV2 on if you wanted, and then really enjoy it. So yeah, get in touch if you
I
fancy
do need to
sponsoring
get
us.
I'm going to get us bobbleheads
It would be
of
cute,
us.
wouldn't it?
I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it this week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who are we?
I've been and remain to be Robin Morgan.
I am the artist formerly known as Mel Owen.
I am the journalist formerly credible called Will Hayward. Please sign up to my newsletter if you want more political analysis.
See you next week.
Bye.